community, welcome to another episode of this Blender weekly resume summary of what's new in Blender this week. Not so much in the community actually, no announcements other than the Google Summer of Code has come to an end. So we're gonna see some blog posts on the code.blender.org this week. Other than that, I think it's all about what's new in Blender in general. There are some updates on video sequence editor, as you see in the title of this live stream. Also modifiers. There is user interface improvements, geometry nodes, a few new nodes in the made it to the agenda, and a bit of everything. It's not gonna be super cramped, but the few updates that there are super neat. I can't hear you, really. Can't hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me, please. Okay, it's the one person that I cannot, yes, I cannot hear. I'll continue like I didn't read anything. Please, thumbs up if everything is okay. Now I lost track. Oh no, you know what is cool? Well, when there are news in the modifiers, such as existing modifiers. No new modifiers, but existing ones. Let's see this one in particular. So have you used the mask? The camera is a bit too bright, but let's go here. It's tiny. So have you used the mask modifier? You know the mask modifier, it masks out, or it removes parts of your geometry that you mark with a vertex group. So basically it's removing geometry based on a vertex group. It's very I would just say straight forward. It removes geometry until now. Which it also removes geometry, but there is a new option that is called smooth interpolation. And since we don't have many things to show, let's do a demo today. So okay, I have this little cube. I'm gonna subdivide it a few times, and I'm gonna add a mask node to this. So in the mask node, you're gonna find a new mask. It's in generate. Doesn't really generate geometry, and I hate that the mask node is by default like it removes all your geometry, because basically it's waiting for a vertex group which is empty of the first time you add it, so you have to invert it to see what is going on, and then you can paint something, and that something can go into here, right? Maybe you should create one by default. Okay, so basically this is what it does. It removes geometry like from where you're painting. The new option, it's super neat because it's called smooth, and once you turn it on, you have a threshold value that you can select, and it's gonna not just remove at the edge of the vertices, but it's also going to have a little bit of smooth with a threshold that it's like I'm burning these vertices over here. So cool. So if you see the geometry, it's actually like closing, making little edges at the, you know, I don't know what it does, magic, but it looks super cool. It's like a Boolean painting, removing geometry. Oh, this must work really well with the dynamic paint, right? Wow, that's cool. Okay, I'm not gonna get tempted and test it now because I have to see more stuff, but this is super neat. So, okay, credit. Who made this? Henrik, thank you so much for working on this. Super neat. And thank you, Campbell, for reviewing it. And the camera is very bright. It's gonna go down, no worries. The next option, the next feature is actually not in the modifiers. This is all that there was for this week for modifiers. Let's see how it went this week with Blender Sequencer, Blender Video Sequence Editor. This feature has been under development for a long time. So, and it's basic, really basic for any video editing software. Blender now has it, and it's called overwrite mode. What does it mean? Well, at the moment, if you just drag a strip on top of another strip in Blender, it will move it to wherever it can find some room. So let's see. If I go to video editing, today I feel like making demos of everything, if you don't mind. Let's see. So I have a color strip here. It's going to be a very nice red color. And then you see, if you drag something and leave it on top, it just moves it, which is really super cool for for this kind of editing when I when I'm just trying to show stuff. But hey, what happens if I grab my yellow strip, orange-ish, and if I drop it here, you see it becomes red, and then if I drop it, it's gonna try and fit it wherever it can. So in this case, I'm in the first frame, so it doesn't fit anything. Let's see if I drop it in, but using another mode. So the expand mode already existed in Blender. So once you drop it there, it's gonna make some room for it inside. But the override is a new option that if you leave it here, you can just drop it wherever you want, click and drop, and it's gonna cut these strips underneath to make some room for it. So what happens if you have the entire place here? Like if you have a strip that covers the entire thing, so you drop it here, and it should, oh, I hate that you have to, you click here, and then that click stays. Sorry. I shouldn't complain about existing features. But hey, drop it here and then all the underlying strips should go away. And they did. Very destructive. So it's a good thing we have undo nowadays. Yeah, but that's pretty much it actually. It's pretty straightforward. It works like that in other softwares too. So there's not much new if you are not, if you're just coming from another software. But in Blender, this is huge. Okay, color previews. Pablo, how come you're on Windows? I mentioned this a few times. No, actually, next week I'm gonna be at the studio, so I'm gonna be on the studio. I have Linux. I think I'm gonna be at the studio because we bought the microphone, we bought the gear. I just missed a camera, so that's why I'm also testing a new camera here. It's a second-hand Sony Alpha 5 5100. So testing it. That's why I messed up the settings. And it might shut down at some point because I think the battery doesn't last that long. Let's continue. So let's see. That was not only that wasn't the only update here. So in terms of UI, there is this drop down in the middle. I think this could become buttons, like a toggle like this, just so you don't have to click, 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 click. Yeah, I know you can click, drag, and then release, but it's not as fast. In other softwares or just in general in Blender, these kind of things, you can just click and it will be like an expanded enum, but we need icons. So if you know how to make icons, please try and show us what you can do. Yeah, it should be something like this, you know, and you just click and select. Okay, more updates in the VSE front. The workspace or the application template. So when you start Blender and you go into video editing, application template, yeah, what is it called? Default file in Blender, but under the hood is called application template. When you go here, now by default, Blender, and you may want to sit down for this one, will set up video settings with audio enabled. Yep, Blender video editing workspace didn't have audio enabled by default, so you always have to go and do it, which I think for a video editing workspace it made sense. It took a while, but now it's here. It should be enabled by default in encoding. It's using AAC with 256, which I think is way too much for what, I mean, maybe if you're making film, but you probably use something else. Yeah, still good quality. H.264, medium quality, so good encoding speed. So that's very, very welcome to have new defaults over there. And there is a new update as well in, well, it's a cleanup of under the hood. for the speed effect. But with this cleanup, we have cleanups all the time. That's why I don't mention them in the live streams, but we have their cleanups every day, multiple times a day in the code and optimizations and so on. This one in particular I mentioned because it actually has a nice side effect, which is a feature. So by cleaning up the speed effect, the effect of that you can control the speed of a strip, now you can have negative values. And in the past, it failed, so negative values didn't do anything. But now it does something. Actually, it will play the strip backwards. So it kind of makes sense, even, right? If you add speed and the speed is -1, flip it, go backwards. So yay for that. I don't know how it's gonna work with older files. If someone by mistake had a negative value in there and was expecting to not do anything, it's kind of on them, right? I don't know if it has some do versioning. Actually, here you can see, no, usually when they are, or maybe it's in a different commit, but sometimes you will see in the code, if you look at the code, which is really interesting, the do versions, like a versions file. So it means that whenever you open this file, your file that you are working with this crazy setup in older versions or in newer versions, it will do something. Blender will either change the value for you, add a node, a missing node for you. So it's it knows in advance. Time travel, like Bruno says in the chat, something like that. All right, I think that's all for the video sequence editor. Yeah, let's switch gears into geometry nodes. This week we have 2 new nodes. So ring the node alert. We don't have a node alert. So there is an enhancements actually, and the new node. So the cube primitive node got improvements. You can check it out here. It's in the regular cube mesh, but the options now, they look a bit more similar to the grid node, where you can choose how many vertices you're gonna have per dimension. So now with this, it looks closer to the grid, but also allows you to do some crazy stuff. So here, I think there is a demo here with other math nodes, but yeah, you can have this kind of stuff. So yeah, size X, size Y. I don't know if this is the latest. Let's see. Today we have some extra time, so let's try things live. So add a mesh primitive cube. There you go. Yeah, it's actually very close. Size X, Y. It's a vector. 3 vectors. Nice, makes sense. And then the vertices. That's cool. All right, cool. Next, the improvements here, by the way, before I even continue with this, thank you, Yaresh, for working on this, for improving it, and hope to see more from you in the future. And thanks to all the developers that review this code as well. So the next improvement is a new node that adds to this curve. This release, Blender 3.0, is going to be the geometry nodes curves release. At least in the geometry node size, because every week I think we're getting a new node or 2 related to this, and the workflow is getting pretty complete. There is now a curve fill node that will close the geometry, or basically it's going to convert it. It takes a curve and it outputs a mesh that is like flat on the z-axis. So it looks something like this. So you can do this kind of stuff. And it's gonna be a mesh as output, so you can do pretty much anything with it. Triangle, since I'm here, let's see how it looks in reality. So curve fill, it has an expanded, yeah, it's pretty much the same, but since it had 2 options, it's easier to just expand the enum. All right. Okay, let's see here in the chat. Hans says Howard Tricky also made some improvements to the underlying algorithm for this node. Really? for curves node. Howard, don't. That's so cool. So after all the Booleans improvements and stuff, that's so cool. So yes, thank you, Eric, Howard, Hans, Jack, everyone. Kara also for doing the tests, everyone. Okay, the next is an improvement on an existing node. In the grid node, now you can allow, now this node allows you to have one vertex in the grid node. So what does it mean to have one vertex? Well, you can draw a line. So it's like allowing you, like removing some limitations that just to expand the flexibility of this node. So yay, thank you, Matthias Fredriksson. Many new names. Let's talk Matthias for a bit. How long have you been involved with this patch? And there is another patch here, point grid primitive, but not so long ago actually. The history goes as far as July now. So well, welcome if you're new to the development. I know actually 2015, been around for a while, but still welcome to the Blender.Today show. Haven't seen your name around here, so hope to see more from you as well. Okay, switching gears. Now I think it's a bit of everything. This one, it's more of a asset browser, but it's only one, so it doesn't deserve the Mario pipe sound because it's an improvement. It's a fix / improvement on extracting thumbnails from blend files. So where do you use these thumbnails? Well, on the asset browser. So if you're browsing for materials, or in the file browser as well, if you're gonna append something from a file, it used to happen all at once. It used to load all the thumbnails at once for the entire file. Now it's gonna stop after it finds the thumbnail it needs. So yay for that. How's that work with compressed files? That's another downside I think from compressed files, is that if you want to go append stuff from it, it's probably gonna be slower, or yeah, it should be possible, but it's gonna be definitely slower. Okay, time to switch gears and let's talk a little bit about user interface. In this update, we have my favorite is less jiggly user interface. So have you ever noticed in the nodes in here, in these nodes? Well, it's very hard to see except in the video that Harley uploaded. So if you go to the patch itself, there is a very illustrative GIF here. Can you tell the difference? On the left, there are dancing balls. And on the right, they're super nice, steady. That it was a rounding issue. So when you were transforming, moving the nodes around, there were some math stuff going wrong, or rounding wrong at least, and it will look like jiggle. So there is still a little bit of jiggle in the text and stuff, but at least the rest of the geometry on the nodes, it doesn't move as much. So yay for that, for super smooth. I think the text is yeah, but it's nothing really. It does for a great experience. You know, I like to show there is always, when you're showing stuff in public, there is always someone that didn't know that you can rotate the nodes, and even you can even, oh Jesus, okay, and you can even hit R twice to rotate in trackball mode. That is super cool. I don't know who uses this feature, but it's a cool party trick. Let's continue. The next improvement in the user interface is also by Harley. Harley has been pretty active. He has a list of patches that are just touched everywhere in Blender user interface. Some of them are long-standing issues, and some of them are things that you know they're there, or sometimes you feel they're there. They're weird, and he goes and fixes them. Like this, like the nodes content jiggling. That was super cool to see that fixed. This one too. Consistent area move snapping location. So if you are familiar with Blender 2.8, at the beginning of 2.8, I think when the new when the windows sizes change and stuff, there was a new feature for snapping when you transform, when you change the size of an editor. So you can hit Control and it will snap. So the logic for snapping was a bit too smart. It will first try to do it on thirds, then on half, and then like eighth. So it wasn't consistent. And after some testing and from feedback, it was decided that it would just take the entire screen, divide it by 12, and that's it. In the end, it's more predictable. Websites do it like that. They're like most of the website frameworks make a 12-column system where you just fit things in there, and usually it all fits. Like from, if you have like a 3, 6, you can go wrong with that. Usually everything fits. So it's good to learn from that and apply it. So thank you, Harley. And this one is a fix in the dope sheet editor under the grease pencil and mask. There was a very weird behavior. So if you were in dope sheet, but in the, where is the dope sheet? Here, dope sheet, grease pencil. So this drawing, the summary, was drawing in like pretty anywhere. It was starting very random. It was starting in the frame 0, which by default you can't even animate on frame 0. You start in frame 1 by default. So it didn't really make a lot of sense. And also the colors were overlapping. So it was more this color was more prominent before frame 0 than after. So it wasn't really a great experience. So this was fixed in mask and grease pencil because they share the code pretty much. It wasn't fixed on the dope sheet itself, and I need to ask feedback to the community if this needs to be changed. This is how the dope sheet looks. So it has an entire line, and it doesn't really care if there is it's just one big block. It doesn't show or hide depending on, it doesn't make it more or less prominent on the frame start and end range. So that's for feedback. That's to gather feedback from the community. If you have any suggestions, jump into the animation channel on the Blender chat. More updates related to grease pencil as well. The move up and down buttons for Vertex group, it wasn't there. Yeah, that was missing consistency. So grease pencil can have Vertex groups just like just like a Blender regular Vertex groups, but the ups and down buttons were not there, so you couldn't shuffle stuff. Now you can. The one change that happened regarding the user interface is that the fade inactive geometry overlay, it used to be on by default, because when you were sculpting and you wanted to move from one object to another while sculpting, it was good to see which one you were sculpting at one time. However, now with the operator to switch, to quickly jump between one mode and the other, one object and the other, that's not really needed anymore. So the setting is still there, but it's off by default. So I'm talking about the here, the fade inactive geometry. So when you have an object in edit mode or any other mode, here, this one, this is now off by default. Still there though. Okay. Let's see. Rename existing Boolean to mesh Boolean. Yeah, there was a name change in one of the nodes. It used to be called Boolean, now it's mesh Boolean to be more precise. Mesh was this was appended to all the mesh or most of the mesh related nodes, because now we have curves as well, but also to make it more clear. Okay, I think I'm done with the updates for the user interface. Yes, let me have a drink. Or maybe I can use this moment to, instead of having a drink, and then just lower the intensity, the intense intensity. Okay, there, is it better? Okay, cool. All right. Did change is in a branch. Oh no, I showed a branch stuff. Oh yeah, it's unpublished commit. Oh well, okay, but it's just a rename. It's not a big change, but it's on a branch. But it eventually should happen. Thank you, Hans, for mentioning it. Yeah. So, hey Pablo, thank you for showing me the AltDrag for Windows. You know, it's funny. I have a little tool for you which can help you resize Blender. Check out Sizer 4.0. I'm gonna check it because you know what? It's funny that you mentioned that I mentioned AltDrag on Windows because it's currently not working for me. It's sometimes it crashes. You know, that's the thing. Not having it natively in the operating system, it gets on the way because it can crash. It's like the same. Power Toys fixes a lot of things, yeah, but until it crashes. So yeah, you see, I have to start AltDrag again, and now it works. This for an operating system called Windows, maybe you should have better window management. Time to proceed because I can. Okay, here, let's move on. There's only one solution, Pablo. I know. Well, you know, I like to say that shouldn't complain of things I can change. And the operating system, I can't change it. I just need to sit down and fix it. But now I'm having fun with some apps that are only on this operating system, unfortunately. But at work, I'm having fun. And also for like compiling Blender and stuff, at work, it flies on Linux. And opening and closing and everything. It's like a second to compile Blender when you do small changes. Of course, I have a thread ripper over there, but still. Anyway, let's continue because this is like the kind of a potpourri section. It's a bit of everything. This one is the funny commit of the week. This one is a typo that has been there for years, decades, I would say. This has been since Elephant's Dream when the compositor was added, so 2005. Yep. The converter nodes are now renamed to converter nodes. So actually converted, it is a word, right? It's for like if you meaning a person or thing that converts something. So you could call a node a converter, right? Or not. Anyway, it has been renamed. So it's a converter node. Yeah, it's funny though. It started like a little change by James Partsafas, and then Brecht jumped in and it's like, okay, I'm going to rename the entire inside of Blender to fix it. So yay for that. Search and replace converter for converter. Massive change. That was a fun commit of the week. Now let's talk a little bit about Python. So this is mainly for add-on developers or script developers. There is a few changes. There is even an addition to the API for the tool system. So now tools support per tool gizmo group properties. So per group. And there was another commit right after here. If you look at this commit, all the links are in the description of this video, by the way. But if you look at the, for example, this commit, it has it adds some settings to the inset here, to the inset in widget properties, to the inset tool. So this you can use as an example by using the new change that Campbell made. So here, committed alternate changes to customize the gizmo. So here, this is the commit that you can use as a reference. Increase the inset tool size. And yeah, it uses this, the widget properties, which were in the previous commit that I just mentioned. So if you have tools on your add-ons, make sure you check out that because it's gonna make for a nice addition. Also, speaking of Hans, he was in the chat here. There has been a massive refactor of how IDE properties are stored in the, how data is stored in the IDE property, in the settings, basically. So it caught my attention because it mentions that their must be add-ons out there, and actually there were a few in the Blender repository, like the official add-on that come with Blender, that were using or abusing the API in weird ways. So there has to be some changes done manually. Actually, there is a patch here. Maybe you can see that as a reference. Update add-ons for the _RNA UI removal. So I guess just by going at the code, you can see how it was before and how is it after. So now it's UI data update instead of going on and updating like this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the commit that is again linked in the description, you can see the before and after. So thank you for this refactor. It's basically making it much easier to look up defaults and maximum and minimum, and also to update them. So yay for that. Thank you, Hans. Thank you for writing such a thorough explanation and examples and documentation. Okay, speaking of add-ons, there has been an update on the collection manager add-on, which I know is pretty popular, but I don't use it myself, so I don't know exactly what. I just can read that the X labels that show up in the UI, in the header, these X labels have been replaced by an operator that generates the corresponding slot when clicked. So instead of not finding it, it's going to generate that. So I guess it makes a collection or generates a slot. I think each slot is I'm not familiar with the add-on, but I'm trying to guess. Other than that, glTF got a bunch of fixes, like 6 or 7 commits this week, mainly fixes. So if you use the glTF add-on and you had issues with it, make sure you update your builds if you're using Blender 3.0 alpha. Okay, time to some quick Cycles X updates. In this week there has been an improvement, quite a big improvement on improving the viewport update. If you have a really fast computer or your scene is very simple, the first sample is gonna be it's gonna, for the denoiser, it's gonna be being calculated based on time and not on samples. So you can read the description here. Yeah, basically this change has been made because if you have a device fast enough to exceed 32 samples in 0.1 seconds, then the next viewport update you will serve is in 2 seconds after render start. So yay for that. And again, the videos and the links in the description, you can, they're all in the description in this video. You can see how fast it is. So, because it's using time, and I guess that it's in samples, but still it's calculated in time. So it's clearing really fast. This is the new random walk SSS, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, removals. Cycles X is removing, not the branch is removing for both for Eevee and for Cycles, the accurate cryptomat implementation. So apparently it was adding a lot of having issues with memory, was the performance penalty for Eevee was too big, and really, at least based on feedback, not the community wasn't really using it that much, or at least we're not like you could do without that accurate mode. However, if you have a file and you can show the difference between not accurate and accurate, and yeah, show it and explain why is it needed, like super needed, I think they will be open to at least discuss it here. If there are cases when the accurate is really a must-have, we'll need to have a demo files and investigate how it can be supported on both CPU and GPU. Yeah, that was another big thing, feature parity between CPU and GPU. So again, demo files, they are incredibly useful. The demo files, if you know, is the list of artwork files, not only the splash screens, but also all these files. They are super handy for the developers to test, to try things. So these are always welcome. And also it's a good gift to the community. They can see what Blender can do, and it's pretty neat. Okay. That is... No, actually more removals. This is just a heads up if you're using Cycles X. And also not really, because it wasn't used anywhere in Blender. It's just a bit of nostalgia, because the FSAA, or what was it? Full sample anti-aliasing. It was added by Ton Rosendahl. Yeah, who other? We don't have a lot of tons. So long ago, and it was such a lifesaver. The anti-aliasing was suddenly great when using compositing and Blender internal, and now it's gone because it's no longer used, and it's if used would be implemented in a completely different way. So yeah, say buffers also is going away, and yep, and full sample FSA. So yeah, this is for the nostalgia corner. Okay, that is all. I think I'm finished. Yes, I am done with the updates for this week. Let's see what's new. What's new? Or let's see what the Blender community is wondering about by going to Blender.community and read the questions over here. So let's see the questions here. Question. Alrighty. Let's see. How many questions? 14. Okay. There are some replies too. Thanks for everybody that replies to the questions, especially when I don't know what the answer is. Or there, flipping to the other side. Also, because sometimes there are some updates in branches that I have no idea. Or patches or add-ons. Also, I'm not super big on add-ons. Lucky Kadam. Hi Pablo, how are you doing? Big fan of the show. Thank you very much. Big fan of you, Lucky. Question. I'm so looking forward to Grease Pencil, Bezier stroke type, but looks like work is paused. Do you know what's the plan? Any plan to include it in 3.0? Thanks for the awesome updates. I talked to the developer Folk David, has worked on the project, and he said he no longer works for Blender, so unfortunately there won't be any progress regarding this project from him, at least. That is very sad news to hear. The projects though, usually they can be tackled by other developers. Like the code is there and it's GPL. That's the magic of GPL, that it could be addressed by other developers. It could be recovered. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have any updates on this. I could ask the rest of the developers if somebody wants to take on this, or maybe it's just a matter of doing tools with geometry nodes and Grease Pencil. I think both have a place in the heart. Actually, it's so close. Look, there's not so much. Or maybe Focus will work on it at some point. I don't know. The fact that people no longer work with Blender is not or for Blender is not an indicator that the project will stop. Usually, if people get really attached to their code, even if it's done, and actually most of the work that Folk has done was outside of being paid by Blender. Like Antonio Vazquez also doesn't work for Blender, and he rewrote remade the entire Grease Pencil system. Daniel or Matias also, they don't work for Blender. So everything that you have seen until now for Blender in Grease Pencil wasn't paid by the Blender Foundation. It's just made out of their good hearts. So question, I am so looking forward. Okay, yes, so this was answered. So here, okay, Giuseppe Buffalo. Hi Pablo, greetings from Australia. What time is it down under? At the moment, in Blender, when we want to change a parameter to multiple objects, like for example the scale, we have to use apply single to selected or apply all to selected in order to change that parameter to all selected objects. Why is it different from all the other 3D softwares? What are the benefits, and will Blender ever change this workflow in the future? Thank you. P.S. Do you think at some point you could stream Blender.Today in the morning, afternoon for people that live in Australia? Well, I'm going to Argentina, which is also down there, completely opposite side of the world, but it's in the southern hemisphere. So maybe at some point, if I stream from Patagonia, I will kind of match, in a way, your time, or be even worse. Okay, so to answer your question, there is a way to modify settings in multiple objects at the same time, even if they are like without using the right-click setting. So if you want to move all of this in, or you want to apply a setting like the normals, like you want to apply auto smooth to all of them. So you just need to hold Alt and then click, and that will be applied to everything. So now when you shade smooth, it's applied to all of them. So that is one way, holding Alt. It's really hidden though. It's completely hidden. I think the main issue is that it will completely change how Blender works. That's one thing, but you could argue we are in Blender 3.0, so it would be a good time. The second issue is the user interface. It should highlight somehow, like if you have these three objects and then you want to move them in the Z-axis, you see now or the X-axis, only the active object moves, unless you hold Alt and then all three will move. That's great. But the user interface should show you that. Should, like when you hold Alt, maybe it should highlight the settings that are available for all three objects. In this case, transform, they are, but many of the other settings are not. So where's the limit? So it's mainly a user interface change, and also the fact that it will change how Blender works, and that means that you have to reteach the Blender users. Although it would be, I think it would be worth it. Okay, hello Pablo, how are you? Okay, back to that. There are patches though, and there's even mockups on how it should look, with like dashed lines whenever it's possible to change all three. But yeah, still a work in progress. Okay. Hello Pablo, how are you? I was wondering where is Severin. I have been tracking some animation branches and I haven't seen any activity from him at all since the 12th of August. Well, here in Europe, it's holiday time, so that may give you a clue. It's summer in some places. Today was summer in Amsterdam. Yesterday was really not summer. So some people flee the country during this time of the year. Okay, Brandon 3D says, hey Pablo, any updates in retopology? Retopology will be really great and improves Blender workflow a lot. I feel like some basic steps should have started by now. Well, the basic, you could call the poly build a basic step. I would call it a very basic step, the poly build tool. But yeah, this needs definitely more love. I know Tom really wants to push for this. We need a developer that likes to do this kind of stuff. You have to really like retopology to do something about it. But even a mockup, or like, is there any proposal here on right-click select about retopology besides just asking that it gets better? Like support for retopology mode for Blender. Yeah, I know. You see, this looks great. This could already be a big improvement. The Synchron modifier. No, yeah, no. You see, this is like working around what Blender could do, what you can do by hand. So this can be an add-on basically, but a true retopo mode should be, I think it should be its own mode, right? Think so. Okay. Any updates? Retopology will be great. Okay, next question. How much Blender makes from YouTube? 0. If you get advertisements on any of the Blender YouTube channel videos, then, well, then there is something wrong, because Blender, the entire Blender Foundation YouTube doesn't have advertisement on. Ivek, see my profile. You see mine. Graphic. Hi Pablo, I have a problem with playing strips in VSE sync to audio. In Linux Mint, it always stops replaying after one frame. Where can I report the bug? Sync to audio in Linux Mint. Always stops after playing one frame. You can go from help, report the bug. This will open this window where it's gonna pre-fill the box with your operating system, your graphics card, and the Blender version that you're using. So it's very important that you use it that way, because then people can see like, oh, it's using a whatever graphics card with the driver 4.7 point something. That way makes it easier to tackle what could happen. Next question. Hello, Pablo. Didn't manage to get red last week. Trying this time. Congratulations. I would like to propose the idea of having pre-selection highlighting in Blender just for loop and ring selection. I know that pre-selection highlighted is considered an anti-feature, but I think that there are specific types of selection, like loop selection, that would really benefit from having a visualized that what's going to be selected before actually doing it. It happened so many times to me that selecting a loop took multiple tryouts because the wrong loop was selected. But how is it gonna if you couldn't know which one was the right loop when you alt right click, how is Blender pre-selection going to be better at that? Don't you think that it would also get confused? Because I don't know, I think it can flicker a lot in these cases. Like if you couldn't pinpoint with the precision of your mouse or your pen, I think it would just be a bit confusing. However, because Blender has an object mode and an edit mode, having pre-selection for some things can maybe help in also to tell, okay, which mode I'm in, besides of course seeing giant vertices and colorful faces. So I don't know, I think Blender is a bit I know it's an anti-feature, but I think even then as an anti-feature it's not really following, it's not really true to its decision, because it actually, you have pre-selection in some places, right? It's not pre-selection but a preview at least on when things you do. So I don't know, I think it would be cool as an option though, just to test it, just to see how bad it is and how it could help. Okay, while I don't want to mess with the core decisions of Blender design, I think that pre-selection has its good reasons to exist in some cases. At least for loop and ring selection, while we really need to avoid the time wasted to click multiple times just to get the right one. Yeah, again, if the user couldn't get it right, how is pre-selection gonna get it right? You know what I mean? Yeah. The other issue is that if you only have it for some tools, then it's gonna people are gonna ask for all the tools, and then you get a little fireworks when you're working with your with your mesh. So if it's in, it should be an option. Hi Pablo, how do we have a cube by a corner using the bottom add cube icon and then zoom and rotate when drawing it? I want to zoom, pan, or rotate before the final point is added. Adding a cube by using the bottom. The bottom add cube, this one you mean? So this. How do you, you want to rotate as this is moving? No, it's a model tool. So once you are in that mode, you can't rotate. You know, you have to go like, yeah, you can't rotate, sorry. Okay, hi, Pablo. And this is the last question. Well, we have more, and we're 2 minutes past 6. So let's do 5 more questions. Hi, Pablo. Know of any plans to add a control to allow us to dissolve objects in Blender? As in create a transparency that can be animated. What? I don't mean for the material, but for the what? Wait. Any plans to add a control to allow us to dissolve objects in Blender? Okay, so it's not the mesh. create a transparency that can be animated. So, but not in the material, but for the object itself. Well, I mean, you can just use the compositor for that, but that would be the easy answer. Why, like, for the entire object? But then how do you blend parts that are semi-transparent, like materials that are semi-transparent with none, or emission materials? I think using compositing for that could be easier, or just use, just animate the alpha of your shaders, or just have vertex groups. Well, yeah, you could have. Yeah, with a slider, you mean? Because otherwise you can also just mark the entire object as a holdout object, and that will make it transparent. The entire object, and you can animate this, right? You can press I on top of it so it gets animated. But yeah, not with a slider though. Okay. What else? Next. This was added. This was here. Hello, Pablo. Do you know? Question number, that was 4. As you know, probably all too well, there has been a demand in the return of the Blender Reels. I myself had also wished this, so I decided to take things into my own hands and start a dev talk thread here. Here's the link. So if anyone asks about them, because that happened a few times, you can redirect them here. Where is it? Reel 2021. Here's the list. I think Blender has come a long way since the last. Wow. So there. That's cool. Thank you for making this list. So this will make for a very long reel though. I think we should keep it short. Blender used to have reels for Blender 2.8. We had the made by you reel. This is like the last. This was the last real reel. I think we should make something like this for Blender 3, but maybe use something more new than Tears of Steel and other older projects. But yeah, Blender reel, this 1 minute, less than 1 minute. See, less than 1 minute. I think we should go for this, because even though Blender has a playlist called Made with Blender, with reels, these are all feature reels. And we had a reel in the past, like the 2011 reel, but that was for almost 5 minutes. Nobody's gonna watch a 5-minute reel of Blender, no matter how good it is, how amazing it is. 5 minutes, it's a bit too much. So 1 minute, and it will fit on Instagram, on TikTok, on everywhere. So yeah, let's but thank you for working on it. Have you ever tried a self-portrait with Blender? Myself? No, I don't like my face enough to self-portrait in Blender. In paper, I never tried it, but I think I should, because it's a good exercise. But yeah, in Blender, I know it would be so cringy. Like, you have to model all the worst parts of you. That, well, unless you really like your face, but not a big fan. Before, we could see multiple keyframes, 3D objects at the same time with ghosts. Do you know how to do that nowadays? I think that hasn't changed. Multiple 3D objects at the same time with ghosts. Yeah, that is onion skinning. That hasn't gone anywhere. It didn't get any better, but it's still there as motion paths. Once you calculate the motion paths, it's gonna show as as an overlay, I think. Yeah, motion paths overlay. But yeah, it's there for armature objects. Okay, I think I covered everything, all the news, and even all the comments. There's no more. So time to call it a day. Okay, now the lighting is a bit better. I'm a bit more in the frame. Yes, I think the lighting of the camera is better. Again, this is a Sony Alpha 5100 second hand from 2014 with a kit lens. So pretty impressive. There is even some bokeh in the back. That's so cool. So happy. I used to have another camera, way more expensive, 5 times more expensive, and it looked worse than this. So I think I'm gonna get one for the studio. To do the live streams at the studio. As I mentioned, we already got the new microphone and an arm and a mixer to start live streaming from my office at the studio. That will be pretty crazy to be there. I can even have guests if Corona allows it. Which Sony Alpha again? It was Sony Alpha 5100 from 2014. It's really old, but it's the oldest one that can do full HD, can do 4K, but 4K. But it can output clean HDMI with a flip-up camera, and I don't have a mirror to show you, but it looks pretty neat. Okay. No, not even my phone. Yeah, no. Okay. That is all for this week. I hope you had fun. We saw a bunch of new stuff all over the place. My favorite, I think it must be the mask, the smooth mask in the node. Then some geometry additions, but the video sequence editor, OVERWRITE, that was amazing. That's so needed. So cool to see the video sequence editor getting some love, it's even in the most basic features. I think we need some more tools, like the tool system needs to be more revamped. There is a branch on transform preview, so as you move the strips or transforms or whatever, it will update the preview. That's gonna be night and day. That's gonna be super welcome. Okay, time to wrap it up. I'm gonna be streaming in the same setup in Spanish. So if you habla español, I will see you in Blender hoy, separate channel. Other than that, I will see you maybe for the last time in here. Maybe till next week. Stay tuned, blend, happy blending, and I will see you again, same place, no different place, same time, same channel next week for Blender.Today live. And watch out your headphones. Okay. Again, go have fun, download the latest Blender. Just try it out, share it, it's yours.